Hi, everyone. My name is James Marcuzzo. I'm the instructor for KSS, and I've taken over your class from Dr. Hunter. I occasionally do these videos because I think it's fun to sometimes have a face to put to the stuff that we do on the website. I'm particularly interested in this topic between Sawhill and Matthews for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's an interesting and relevant conversation for us to understand, but also because the Matthews article is poorly written, regardless of what you think about his actual sentiments in there. So I want to talk to you a little bit like I would if we were in a classroom. I won't make this long. I hopefully it won't go any more than 10 minutes. I might say some similar things that I said in the post in the announcements, but I'll try to keep it fresh here. So where to start? Let's go with Matthews. Matthews makes some mistakes in how he frames his argument and how he defines things. So I'll start with his mistakes, and then we'll try to strip away all of that and just get at the heart of what is he saying in reality. And then we'll talk about Sawhill, and then we'll kind of put together their ideas and show what's up. Matthew starts out the discussion that equality of opportunity is a bad goal. It's true that it would be a bad goal if we practice equality of opportunity as he describes at the beginning of his article, which is something like a perfect leveling of all opportunities in this tyrannical, dystopian, all parents' decisions are mandated by the government or something. You can't give a child more love or more attention or more education, right? Yeah, he's right. That would suck. We don't do that, so it doesn't really matter. So he's kind of setting up a straw man argument. He comes at this from apparently a deeply emotional, empathetic, sympathetic. He really hates the idea that people suffer. Well, fair enough. A lot of people think that way. And so that's what drives him to want to address inequality in society. Now, he actually gets a little bit closer to the story when he talks about bottlenecks, but he makes some mistakes here as well. When he talks about bottlenecks, that's actually closer to the actual practice of what equality of opportunity is in the United States, which is to say it's a lot more like, and I'm going to use specific language here that maybe you can benefit from. Equality of opportunity in practice is something like removing illegitimate bottlenecks or removing illegitimate barriers from people's path to participate, to try, right, to pursue their happiness. So, for example, he uses the example, what he says, the English language as a bottleneck to being in America and being successful. I think that's actually a pretty stupid example, because you go to a country, and whatever country you go to, they have an operating system, and language is part of that operating system, as well as a series of values and behaviors that you as an outsider need to understand and acclimate to so that you can be successful in that system, right? When I go to Turkey, when I go to Morocco, if I were to go to Japan, I would have to learn that language and learn their standards and values and behaviors so that I could succeed in that society where those people live, because it's their society. So to say that the English language here in the United States is an illegitimate barrier or bottleneck, I think is a mistake. But there are all kinds of illegitimate bottlenecks and barriers based previously around sex and race, right? That's what a lot of the civil rights movement was about in the 1960s, was you can't stop people from participating, from trying, because of immutable characteristics, scribe status, demographic status, whatever you want to call it, right? Your skin color, your sex, your religion, these things should not preclude you from being able to try. And that is, I think, really at the heart of what the American sentiment has been around equality of opportunity. He misrepresents that, either intentionally or unintentionally. But his discussion of bottlenecks gets much closer. But then his other problem with equality of opportunity is actually a problem of a merit-based system. He, through his examples of Good Will Hunting and a few others, shows that in a merit-based system, there is inequality because some people are good at stuff and some people aren't good at anything, or they lack the innate desire, motivation, who knows what. We can talk about the biological distinctions. We can talk about the structural or family-based distinctions that set us all so unevenly, right, in the world. All true. And so he's frustrated with the merit-based system. Fair enough. Michael Sandel, famous philosopher from Harvard, has written about this as well. John Rawls, famous American philosopher, cited in Sawhill's article, has discussed this as well. Merit-based systems do create inequality. It is unavoidable. What do we do about that? Well, Matthews suggests the idea of equity, though he describes it poorly. His explanation of equity seems to be directed towards something like a greater redistributive system where we give underperforming, poor, or whatever, however you want to define them, people at the bottom of the economic structure, we just give them more stuff so that they have a home, a roof, running water, electricity, some food, right? They're not out on the street living in abject homeless poverty. Okay, well, so that's what he wants to do, and fair enough. That's one plan. Equity, more generally conceived, is a leveling of the playing field, or a redistribution of resources such that outcomes are equalized. Equity. This almost always entails different rules for different people or different groups. Equity has its issues, but I'll give you at least one example from a well-known philosopher, Mortimer Adler. He talks about our access to our rights, to justice, in equity terms. He says, regardless of who you are, what you've done, what your background is, what your identity is, you deserve the exact same rights as everyone else in your society, which is a very Jeffersonian principle that we saw reflected in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident: all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's not an exhaustive list. There are more. We've come up with several more. Equity is the proper approach to rights, regardless of context, regardless of who you are and what you've done. You deserve your rights. Cool. However, equity is not always appropriate. Consider handing out of grades in this class. Would it be appropriate that everyone got the same grade at the end of this class? No, that would be unfair. That would be a bad metric to use. Some work hard, some don't work as hard. Some read a lot of the articles and really have good insight and connect these ideas through analysis and synthesis. Some don't. Some are capable of more, some are capable of less. That context, that input matters, and it affects your grade at the end. So equity might be appropriate in some scenarios, not in others. Matthews doesn't define equity very well for us, and in the end, what it looks like is UBI on steroids. It's something like a European, maybe the UK, where they have the dole. You get a house, or at least a roof, running water, electricity, right? And that's sufficient. Sawhill, on the other hand, comes at this from a much more pragmatic and arguably even conservative perspective. Inequality, excessive inequality in society, is bad. Why? Well, some inequality is acceptable and even tolerable so long as the rules of the system are clear, you can play by them, and you can benefit from that. But when equality ramps up beyond a certain point, calls into question the legitimacy of the rules and the system as a whole. And then people at the bottom start to go, I don't know if it's worth it for me to play this game, and they flip the board over, burn it all down. Sound familiar? So from either a left or a right perspective, reducing or mitigating inequality has merit. She goes through a much clearer, more straightforward explanation, so I won't bore you with all the details there. But in the end, she determines that if education and family are very strong predictors that lead to equality, inequality, or success, however you want to frame that, then we would be well positioned, it would be in our interest to direct policy at stabilizing the family structure and potentially ensuring that more Americans get a more quality education. And so, so you can weigh that out how you like, but I wanted to give some context to their articles and to the relationship between the articles, and particularly, if you're still here with me, then I want to reiterate this. Equity is about giving different rules to different groups to equalize outcomes at the end of the game, if you will. The problem with this, my estimation, is that it doesn't account for the reasons why the inequality happened in the first place. I think that's a big short-sighted sort of shortcoming, if you will, of equity policy in general. Quality of opportunity as we practice it is much better explained as mitigating or reducing illegitimate barriers. So maybe we'll talk against it.